Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show on this 22nd day of June now, first full day of summer, with the solstice having occurred yesterday on the 21st, 2021. And up first, we've got fire danger, and the high fire danger area expanding westward a little bit there along the Yukon River, with the extreme areas either side of the Porcupine River farther to the northeast, but not too bad on the extreme there, just a few small areas. And a little bit of an increase out west, say the Kobuk Valley, maybe the Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley, seeing some high areas popping up there. And then also in toward the Noatak Valley, where temperatures pushing 80 degrees today at Kelly, so gradual increase in fire danger there. Also, north and northwest side of Lake Iliamna, southern Kuskokwim Valley, we've got quite an area of high fire danger, as well as the Alaska Peninsula there on the west side of the Aleutian Range, and also southwest coast, Cape Newenham, a little bit elevated there. And moving on, hazardous warning graphics. There were no public watches, warnings, or advisories out for the state, but there are marine warnings out, both in the storm and gale variety for the marine areas that we'll look at here in a little bit, or actually in the marine segment to a much closer extent. Otherwise, pretty good up north with hot temperatures. Sunshine today, Arctic coast, North Slope into the northwest interior, 80s into the Tanana Valley, pushing 80 in the Fairbanks area, the greater Fairbanks area, the greater Fairbanks area, pushing around 80 by mid-afternoon. Warm spot at 2 p.m., 3 p.m. was Chalkitsik at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and not far behind, Beaver, 81 degrees, and 80s scattered around as well across that area. More clouds south of the Alaska Range, clouds on the increase, so temperature's not as warm, and kind of capping them off even in the Copper River Basin. And south central Alaska is maybe struggling to even get towards 70. Southeast coast, generally cloudy, maybe a few sun breaks down toward Dixon Entrance. Showers pretty negligible, not much at all. The only area of rainfall was pretty light, and that was Dillingham, picked up 0.06 of an inch of precipitation with some shower activity there, and Sand Point, 0.02 of an inch with that moisture moving northward, and about 0.2 of an inch there with a band of clouds that lifted up across central Aleutians, and a little bit of rain fell at St. George there with the clouds, with a heavier rain yet to come with a bigger storm that's winding up down off the chart there. You can kind of see the cyclonic turn of the clouds south of the Aleutians, and that's going to be moving northeastward with the next system. And actually, it looks like a disturbance spreading some rain up toward the coastal areas of the Panhandle. On the chart today, you can see the warm front there, kind of a secondary low, 993 millibars, and the warm front and moisture streaming out ahead of the main low complex. Otherwise, showers again and clouds mostly over southern Alaska, more sunshine north of the Alaska Range, Tanana Valley, right up to the Arctic coast today. Temperatures at North Slope pushing into the lower 70s in some locations, and at Tuvik, 73 degrees there in the Brooks Range. So summertime for sure up in that area, with actually 24-hour day lengths. Isolated showers over the Panhandle, light winds, nothing really significant, basically over, kind of calm before the storm. So we'll see tonight rain with kind of a weak disturbance. It's off the coast now, or approaching the coast. That'll move in through that weak ridging and produce light rain over the central and southern southeast coast, with the heavier rainfall and winds still back well to your west. But Kodiak Island, heavy wind and rain, heavy at times also tonight, with gale force winds coming in. Shelikof Strait, storm warnings northeast increasing to 50 knots later tonight through tomorrow. And clouds and precipitation chances and even wind will slowly increase south central Alaska and Prince William Sound. Eventually, the eastern North Gulf Coast stays fair over the interior, but scattered thunderstorm activity, Brooks Range, northwest areas on the diminishing note, and stays fair, clear, and mild for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Maybe some patchy fog there right along the coastline in areas. And then for the day tomorrow, we'll see that system the low pressure area parks over the Alaska Peninsula, or drifts over the Alaska Peninsula at about 976 millibars. Rain, heavy at times, or just heavy rain east side of Kodiak Island. And once the front gets north of the area there, or by, then the winds will come down. Otherwise, look for full gales for Kodiak Island. Again, storm warnings for Shelikof Strait. And 45 knot winds, not quite going storm, but just under storm force winds coming into the North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay. Gale warnings for Cook Inlet. Northeast winds 35 knots, northern Cook Inlet, 40 knots, southern Cook Inlet, with pretty good chance of rain across all south central Alaska tomorrow. Heaviest in the upslope areas with that east-southeast flow, and rain heavy at times for the North Gulf Coast, and rain heavy at times for the north coast of the Panhandle, overspreading the entire southeast coast, probably by midday there. Different story in the interior, hot and sunny, with temperatures in the mid-80s for Fairbanks and pushing 90 for the Yukon Flats. That'll trigger a few afternoon thunderstorms, eastern Brooks Range and back over the northwest areas there, just south of the Brooks Range. Still nice north slope. And then the outlook for Thursday. First front washes out along the coast there, but rain persists but gradually diminishes along with the winds. Across the Panhandle and North Gulf Coast, still a kind of a wet, cloudy, cool day, south central Alaska. Even up in the north of the Alaska Range, temperatures will probably not reach 80 in the Tanana Valley, and even cooler for the Yukon Flats there with a little more widespread moisture and possible thunderstorm activity. Eastern Arctic coast, eastern North Slope, Brooks Range on southwestward. Risk of a thunderstorm for the Seward Peninsula if the moisture is available. And numerous showers, cloudy skies, cool conditions for the lower Yukon, Kuskokwim River Valley areas, the Kuskokwim Valley itself, as well as the Kuskokwim Mountains to the eastern deltas. And breezy, windy, wet for the eastern Aleutians, central Aleutians, and Alaska Peninsula. And taking a look at low temperatures for tonight, over the Panhandle, 45 to 50 for your lows, and upper 40s, lower 50s, increasing wind, clouds, and moisture there. So near 50 for Kodiak Island, mid 40s Copper River Basin, upper 40s Bristol Bay, lower 40s out over the Bering Sea, Pribilof, AKwx, upper 30s for St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast to Shishmaref, and upper 30s Western Arctic coast, lower 30s on the central coast, mid to upper 30s on the east side, and probably temperatures near 50 over the north slope, and mid to upper 50s over the central interior areas, but still the Susitna Valley could drop just a shade below 50. Highs for tomorrow looking quite warm up over the upper Yukon Valley. You can see that's, say, Fort Yukon at 88, so 89, 90, Chukyitsa could see 91 tomorrow afternoon, 83 forecast high at Eagle, and 85 Fairbanks with lower 80s there at Tanana, and in the Koyukuk Valley, Bettles, lower 80s, even Ambler at 80, much like today, with mid 70s for the northern Kuskokwim Valley, Nikolai McGrath, and cooler 60s with clouds and increasing chance of precipitation in southern Kuskokwim Valley, and upper 50s near 60 for Bristol Bay and the southwest coast. And of course, windy, wet conditions for Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula. Look for highs no more than the lower, maybe mid 50s, near 50 for the Aleutians, Pribilof's mid 40s there for St. Lawrence Island area, as well as the Arctic coast, highs 40 to 55 degrees. And again, North Slope, Umiat Airfield, inland areas from the Arctic Ocean could see lower to mid 70s possibly for the highs, as well as the Brooks Range. And then the lows the following morning, struggling to fall below 60 degrees there in the upper Yukon Valley. Call it mid to upper 50s central interior, lower 50s out toward the southwest coast, upper 40s thrown in there right along the coastline, mid to upper 40s Bristol Bay, 45 to 52 south central Alaska, and in the 50s lower to mid for the Panhandle, 40s Bering Sea, again upper 30s St. Lawrence Island, right near the frost point there for the central Arctic coast, and mid 30s on the east side, upper 30s west side. Highs cooler for Thursday afternoon, but still about topping 80 there in the Yukon Flats, and Fairbanks area could reach 80, Eagle more likely, and then cooler 60s south of the Alaska Range, south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, and then down into the upper 50s, say Kenai, Soldotna, Homer, Seldovia, and Prince William Sound, Valdez, Whittier, mid to upper 50s, 58 to 63, call it for the Panhandle, and out west about the same, upper 40s, lower 50s for the Aleutians and Bering Sea.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, good VFR, Arctic coast, North Slope, into the interior. on down until you get toward the North Gulf Coast, and you've got IFR into Prince William Sound, south coast of the Kenai Peninsula over to about Cape St. Elias, marginal VFR, Yakutat, and most of the Panhandle, IFR Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, Aleutians, Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island right to the Bering Strait, marginal VFR, north shore of the Seward Peninsula to the northwest coast to Cape Lisburne. And for the afternoon, let's see, we've got marginal VFR spreading northward in the southern interior to about the Alaska Range, but spilling across the Kuskokwim Valley with IFR into the Auckland, Buckland mountainous area there, Nunivak Island, kind of breaking up the IFR, northern Bering Sea becoming VFR, south of St. Lawrence Island, marginal VFR through the Bering Strait, and now IFR along the Arctic coast, central and east side, marginal VFR on the west side, and still a lot of IFR or solid IFR for the Aleutians into the central Bering Sea. VFR northern Cook Inlet, Susitna Valley, maybe the Manuska Valley, VFR also for the Copper River Basin, central areas away from the mountains. And for the, let's see, flying weather Thursday afternoon, we've got IFR up along the Arctic coast and North Slope with some marginal VFR in the interior there, or actually from Norton Sound up just north of the Yukon River into the Koyukuk there, or Kobuk Valley, I'm sorry. IFR for the Panhandle, eastern North Gulf Coast, and central Bering Sea from St. Lawrence Island, all of the Aleutians. Anaktuvik looks good tomorrow. Both Anaktuvik and Atigun passes VFR, north and south entrance. Lake Clark, Merrill, marginal VFR possible on the eastern approach of both those passes, otherwise VFR. Rainy, VFR. Windy, VFR. Isabel and Mentasta, both looking good. VFR flying, north and south entrances. And Tanita, also VFR. And Portage, though, marginal VFR the entire day, probably escaping IFR, hopefully. And Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels showing 10,000 feet, again, that upper level ridging that's slid southeastward into the eastern central interior in the Yukon, kind of holding steady, and so 10,000 feet over the eastern interior, and cooler air aloft with an upper low 4,000 feet near just south of the Pribilofs on down across the central eastern Aleutians. And icing with that big storm coming up, a lot of moisture coming up with a good southerly flow, and so we're looking at considerable moderate rime icing, Kodiak Island tonight, later on, and then tomorrow afternoon shifting up to the Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet, and icing potential on the increase of the Panhandle, especially central and south coast, with the heaviest rain off the coast throughout the day. And from there, taking a look at the jet stream, and you can see with that upper low at, say, 500 mil or 18,000 feet coming up toward the Alaska Peninsula. We got on here the 33,000 foot winds and the wind speeds, and you can see a good jet there aimed right at the southeast coast. And then a split in the flow there, southeast 75 coming across the Barren Islands, taking a turn to the east across northern Bristol Bay. Light winds over the northern interior. And at 9,000 feet, we've got, let's see, southeast winds, 50 knots, with across the Kenai Peninsula, as well as Bristol Bay, and starting to lighten up over Kodiak Island as that front lifts northward tomorrow afternoon. So the strongest winds later tonight and first half of tomorrow. And winds on the increase along the southeast coast, staying light over the inside waters throughout the day, but looking for a significant increase late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening along the outer coastline. Easterlies 40 to 50 knots, central Bering Sea turn northerly at 40 knots over the western Aleutians, and the central interior areas on up to the Arctic coast. Winds are pretty light at this elevation, 3,000 feet. Southerlies 50 knots, eastern Gulf of Alaska turn southeast or east-southeast 65 knots across the Barren Islands and into Kamishak Bay, east 55 knots across Togiak Bay, then back down to 35 knots for the Bering Sea and Aleutians. And turbulence, widespread, considerable moderate chop, could be even severe for small aircraft, southern Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Aleutian Range, eastern Alaska Peninsula, say to Nelson Lagoon, and considerable moderate chop also for the Fox Islands and Adak to Amchitka. Otherwise, kind of a tighter gradient up there, making it a little bumpy, isolated moderate for the northwest coast, Cape Lisbon and Point Hope.
On March 11, 2011, a powerful tsunami hit Japan, destroying cities and villages. As the water receded back into the ocean, it pulled what remained of buildings, cars, boats, and homes along with it. Scrap metals, plastics, and objects of all shapes and sizes either sank near the shore or floated away. In the days that followed, large masses of floating debris could easily be seen by satellite imagery and aerial photos. In the wake of this disaster, NOAA is assessing the potential impact that the debris may have on U.S. shores. So, where will this debris go, and when will it get there? To help answer those questions, scientists are using computer models to estimate the debris' path, using its starting location in the tsunami zone and historical weather and ocean conditions. The findings are that some debris could pass near or wash ashore in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands as early as this winter. Debris may also approach the west coast of the United States in 2013 and potentially circle back to the main Hawaiian Islands in 2014. But scientists caution that there are limitations to what computer models can tell us, now that the debris has moved out of satellite view, and with currents and winds in the Pacific constantly changing, there is no guarantee that the debris will stay on the predicted path. Items will sink along the way, or break up and disperse in many directions. Despite these unknowns, NOAA and its partners are collecting data, assessing possible impacts, and making preparations in case debris does wash ashore. The 2011 tsunami in Japan reminds us that the devastation that happens on land can also become a marine debris issue at sea.
Imagine all of this underwater. In a major tsunami, it could happen. In this part of Washington state, it's happened before, hundreds of years ago. Sometime in the future, it will likely happen again. But we can be ready. If a tsunami strikes, this school will provide a place for people to ride it out above the waves.
We're in Westport, Washington, and right behind me is the very first tsunami vertical evacuation center in the United States.
This is an emergency. Please walk to the nearest exit. Go to the center tower and proceed up the stairs.
Tsunamis are a potential hazard for low-lying coastal areas. That's why many coastal communities have plans in place to get people to safety, high ground or inland, where they can be beyond the reach of a tsunami. Often there are signs showing where to go and where to gather. Most tsunamis are caused by underwater earthquakes along subduction zones, where two of Earth's plates collide and one is forced under the other. Westport and other Pacific Northwest coastal communities are especially at risk because one of these zones lies just offshore. It's called the Cascadia Subduction Zone. An earthquake here caused a tsunami in 1700 that flooded shores as far away as Japan. Experts say it's just a matter of time before it happens again. Since the subduction zone is so close, a tsunami like the one in 1700 could strike before people in some low-lying areas could get to high ground or inland. And Westport doesn't have a lot of high ground or easy routes inland.
If we get an earthquake or a tsunami, we're going to get a lot of water in the area really quickly, and we needed a place to go. So our community built this brand new school, and above our gym and cafeteria, we have a roof. And so the idea is that we'll get all of our students up, and anybody from the community who needs to get up, they can get up there as well.
Ocosta Elementary School might seem like a normal school, but look more closely. It's engineered to withstand monster waves. Tsunami vertical evacuation shelters must be able to resist the powerful forces that a tsunami brings. Hydrodynamic, buoyant, hydrostatic, and debris impact forces and strong currents. They're also designed to help people get to safety quickly.
There are 4 big staircases on each corner of the building, and each one of those staircases is 8 feet wide, and we can get the whole school evacuated in about 4.5 minutes.
Everybody should be at a 0.
On the roof of the building, there is water and food and buckets and shelters and tarps and blankets and different things so that we can be up there for 2, 3, maybe 4 days while we wait for rescue.
You can go to the top and you know you'll be safe. It feels really nice to have a special building because you feel protected.
This community decided that a tsunami evacuation center was important because they didn't have anywhere to go, and they decided to use their money to build the building. The additional cost is anywhere between 10 and 20% of the actual building cost itself, and that's really a sound investment for a lot of protection. You may be there a while, but you're safe and you're secure, and that's the most important thing.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the segment. We've got gale warnings tomorrow on the eastern North Gulf Coast, east-southeasterlies 35 to 40 knots. Small craft advisories on the north and central coast. For southeast winds, 25 knots. These all on the increase throughout the afternoon. Seas building to 8 to 11 feet. And the south coast, south winds 20 knots, seas 7 feet. Inside waters, winds starting out light in the morning, then turning south and picking up about 15 knots sustained. For Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait. Stevens Passage possibly seeing gale force gusts late in the afternoon. Lynn Canal, south 20, gusts 35 knots again late in the afternoon with seas 3 to 4 feet. And then for the outlook on Thursday, we've got small craft advisories for Clarence Strait and Lynn Canal. South winds 25 knots, 5-foot seas. Stevens Passage south at 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Very uniform winds and seas and speeds out over the along the coast. South winds 25 knots for small craft advisory, seas 11 feet. The extreme north coast, south to southeast at 20 to 25 knots, 11-foot seas. Prince William Sound tomorrow. Don't have the gales in we had yesterday for tomorrow, but just under them, 5 knots less. East 30 knots, still a good stiff breeze, and seas at 7 feet. Cook Inlet, though, still have the gale warnings out tomorrow. Northern Cook Inlet, northeast sustained 35 knots with 8-foot seas. South of the Forelands, a full gale at 40 knots from the northeast with 11-foot seas. High-end gales there for Kamishak Bay, east 45 knots. Also for the Barren Islands and the North Gulf Coast, all east 45 knots, seas right around 20 feet. Those come down and turn southeasterly on Thursday. Barren Islands, North Gulf Coast, all down to around the 25 knot range there, 20 to 25 knots, sea subsiding 7 to 11 feet. Prince William Sound, southeast at 20 with 4-foot seas, and Cook Inlet, north of the Foreland, southwest breeze in the afternoon at 15 knots, variable to east 15 knots, southern Cook Inlet. Storm warnings, Shelikof Strait tomorrow, northeast 50 knots, seas 17 feet. East side of Kodiak, just under storm force, high-end gales, east 45 knots, seas right around 20 feet. And 40-knot winds from the east from Sitkinak to Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, though, west 25 knots. Gale warnings, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, northeast 35 knots. 40-knot gales out of the east for Bristol Bay. Those will come down to 25 knots there for Bristol Bay, and the Alaska Peninsula, east-southeast 25 knots for Thursday. Kodiak Island, south to southeast, 20 to 25 knots, seas 12 feet on the Pacific side of the island. Fox Islands tomorrow, north to northwest, 20 to 25 knots, seas 4 to 7 feet. Edakanatka, north 20 to 25 knots, and northwest 25 on Chitka Island, northwest 20, Kiska to Shimia. Outlook for Thursday, small craft advisory, Shemya to Kiska for west 25 knots, northwest 30 knots, Amchitka, Adak, and Atka, as well as Unmak Island, but on Alaska Island, variable winds 20 to 25 knots with 7 to 9 foot seas. And for the southwest coast, gale warnings there, south of Nunivak Island along the Kuskokwim Delta coast, northeast 35 knots, small craft advisories for the Pribilofs north at 25, 20 knot northeast winds for the northern Bering Sea, Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island. And for Thursday, small craft advisory, St. Lawrence Island, north 25 knots, east 25, south of Nunivak Island, and northeast 25 for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. Light south winds for Norton Sound at 10 knots. And then for the Yukon Delta coast, call it east at 20 knots with 5 foot seas. Let's see, the Beaufort Sea coast on the central and east side, light winds tomorrow from the east or east-northeast, only 10 knots or less. West side, though, 20 knots out of the north, all the way down to Cape Thompson to Wales, north of 15. Increase those winds on Thursday. Small craft advisories from Wales to Cape Beaufort. North winds 25 to 30 knots, northeast 25, western Arctic coast, central coast, northeast at 10, east side, east-northeast at 15. Tonight, low clouds, fog, light winds for the north slope and the Arctic coast, with the low clouds of fog kind of scattered around, possibly a chance of for the the coastal areas, mostly offshore. Thunderstorms possible eastern north slope and into the Brooks Range, kind of in a diminishing mode there. Big wind and rain, or rain and wind, heavy wind and rain moving into Kodiak Island, spreading in toward the Panhandle, Alaska Peninsula getting hit pretty good as well. And wet over the southeast Bering Sea. Tomorrow, that's as that low parks over the Alaska Peninsula. That front brings heavy rain, northern Kodiak Island early in the day, spreading to the Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet. Moderate rain into the coastal areas, north and central coast of the Panhandle in the afternoon. And then that lightens up on Thursday with a little bit better conditions.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.